There has been a lot of national attention recently with how church leaders have been behaving during this election cycle, publicly and from the pulpit, demonizing some candidates, endorsing others. The attention that has followed a lot of these statements have many pointing out how saying such things is a clear violation of a church's tax-exempt status because, well, they're usually considered a nonprofit organization under the law. Churches don't pay taxes on property or donations. Some of those accusations have even been aimed at Idaho churches. For example, a little more than 2 weeks ago, Idaho's GOP held a Keep Idaho Red rally in Coeur d'Alene, and they held it at the First Baptist Church, putting out this tweet on October 17th. Packed house tonight. Thank you, First Baptist Church, for opening your doors to our GOP candidates and for being there to speak, and to voters for attending. It didn't take long for the American Atheist to notice and retweet the Idaho GOP, saying the next day, the First Baptist Church in Coeur d'Alene is breaking the law. Report them to the IRS. Even their president, Nick Fish, offered in a quote tweet of his own, they're just openly bragging about breaking the law now. It even got the attention of Newsweek. Idaho Church under fire for hosting GOP rally ahead of midterms. But even in their article, they admitted it is not entirely clear whether First Baptist Church violated the Johnson Amendment by hosting the event. That's the law being referred to when they say the First Baptist Church is breaking the law. The Johnson Amendment. It's a provision to the U.S. tax code implemented in 1954, named for then-Senator Lyndon Johnson. It's basically a part of the tax code that deals with what nonprofits can and cannot do politically. Nonprofits are known as 501c3s because, well, that's where they're identified and defined in the federal tax code. Paragraph 3 of subsection C of Section 501 of Title 25, 501c3. It says such organizations like the Idaho Humane Society or churches, for example, are absolutely prohibited from directly or indirectly participating in or intervening in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for elective public office at the risk of losing their tax-exempt status. So, is a church allowing a political party to use its facility considered a violation of the exemption? We asked that question of a Boise-based tax attorney, Luke Gordan of Gordan, Delich and Associates. He told us it's an area the IRS has avoided recently, especially since they faced significant failures when trying to enforce those rules back in the 1970s and 1980s. There were some very public cases against the Church of Scientology that, well, didn't go in their favor. In fact, the last time the IRS tried something like this was back in 1995. They were successful, however, and a New York church lost its tax-exempt status for taking out a full-page ad against then-presidential candidate Bill Clinton. Luke explained to us there are two parts to this exemption: the lobbying activity, and there's the endorsing a political candidate portion.
The 501c3 organizations cannot lobby on behalf of a singular political candidate. But the statute is pretty clear that it has to be on behalf of one particular candidate in order to not meet that second exemption.
Well, if it wasn't one, what if it was like more than a dozen? For example, the Keep Idaho Red rally at the First Baptist Church in Coeur d'Alene, where a whole roster of Republican candidates stood up in front of those congregated, and where they also offered a slew of political paraphernalia.
That's where the issue of interpreting what behalf of a political candidate is, because that's the actual text of the statute. And a court could say that when it says on behalf of a political candidate, that means that it could be multiple political candidates at once. I think that is a very loose interpretation of the law, but it's definitely one that I could see a court coming to and making that decision. That if there's multiple, totally fine, but a singular one, then you're running into issues.
Is there a factor when it comes to whether or not they charge for use of that space? Is that crossing a line if they give it to them for free?
If they're renting out the space at a fair market rate, then the church can use its assets as it pleases. Even if it offers it for free, if it offers it to the public for certain things, then that would be okay too.
Okay, so any candidate, that's a go. The whole palette, that's a no for one, but for the whole thing, it's a go, I guess. So we did reach out to the church and to the Idaho GOP to ask about how they were able to use that space. Was it offered for free or did they have to pay for it? We still haven't seen a response from either one of them, but the church did respond 2 days after that Keep Idaho Red rally to a publication called The Christian Post. And a spokesperson for the First Baptist Church told them the church did not endorse any specific candidate during the rally and that the Idaho GOP was allowed to use the facility only after the group accepted First Baptist Church mission statement and bylaws and agreed to open the event with a prayer and to remain respectful during the event. They went on to add the church allows the use of its facility to groups that agree to do the same. You got to follow the bylaws, you got to agree to promote Christian behavior, and you got to open the event with a prayer. And that applies to atheists too, or even Democrats. However, Luke says the statute doesn't offer any balancing test either. So there's nothing that says they have to offer the same space to the opposition. And we asked the Democratic Party if they were offered that same space. They said they weren't. Okay, so that would be a reason why maybe the IRS wouldn't threaten the exemption of a church when there's an entire party of candidates brought in during a non-church activity. Okay, but what about a pastor who during a weekly meeting with his congregation says this?
Because I've been asked over and over and over again by many of you in the room and others, I would suggest to you that I am not going to endorse a candidate for governor at this point. But I do like Ammon Bundy. I have to tell you that. I will probably be voting for Ammon Bundy myself. I can't vote for Brad Little, and I can't vote for a Democrat. And so what I want to tell you then is that my vote, I will, at this point, will be for Ammon Bundy.
Okay, so that is Pastor Paul Van Noy with the Candlelight Christian Fellowship in Coeur d'Alene. And he made that claim that he's going to vote for Ammon Bundy during October 19th, during a Wednesday night Q&A session at his church. Not a Sunday service, mind you, but still a room full of his regulars. So does this activity cross the line of participating in or intervening in any political campaign on behalf of a candidate for elective public office?
Are they acting as an individual or are they acting as the organization? I think he chooses his words very carefully, that he says, I am voting, rather than any sort of, and then gives his reasons why. The normal assumption from there is that, oh, then I should vote for him as well. But I think he chooses his words very carefully to try and walk that line of, I am speaking as an individual under my First Amendment right and not as the organization. Quite honestly, I think that the activity there definitely violates the spirit of the amendment. Like, I think that the amendment was created specifically to stop things like that because, you know, you do have a power differential between the pastor and the congregation, and the congregation trusts their pastors. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of religion, is that you trust these people as your moral authorities. And so I think it's kind of this game of chicken that each of them are playing, that neither one of them wants the court to come down the opposite way, and so they're each going to kind of push the line as much as they can.
So a church believing in and promoting a spirit while at the same time possibly violating the spirit of a law is certainly rich. We can all see that, right? Just to point out though, Luke is an attorney, he's not a judge, but bottom line, it's a wide open interpretation here. Even Bloomberg Law put out a publication today reminding us these things have to be done in a nonpartisan fashion. Luke says he believes the IRS is reluctant to pursue any or many of these claims for a couple of reasons. One, it would be an expense to the taxpayer. Two, courts have shown a tendency to expand the free exercise of religion and of speech. And three, as you kind of heard him allude to right there, keeping a large gray area might keep more people avoiding it. Too afraid to kind of where that line is, you might cross it. And getting a court to openly say, well, this much is okay, well, that just might open the floodgates, he says. Not that we haven't already. So hopefully that answers your questions.